Thank you, Douglas. Douglas is a brother to me, not just in a spiritual sense, but he's like a brother, and he's my best friend, and he's actually more competitive than I am, and I'm very competitive. But it's great to be together this morning, and we are talking about the case study Boston, and I've been in Boston all my spiritual life. I always say the Boston Church of Christ is not a perfect church, but it's a great church. The Boston Church of Christ is the church I became a Christian in. The Boston Church of Christ is the church my wife became a Christian. The Boston Church of Christ is the church where all my 6 kids became Christians and are Christians, and the Boston Church of Christ is the church, God willing, where my grandchildren will become Christians too. I love the Boston Church, and I think there are many things that are done really, really well here. And I think the challenge, I actually think it's a challenge to help professionals find their right place in the church. Yeah. I think we have made a lot of progress here in Boston. But you are hearing a lot of things this weekend, and I want to talk about missions, but I really want you, and I want to talk about it in a very personal way. I want you to think about yourself, and I want you to think about your identity. I want you to think about, so who am I and who do I want to be? Identity actually helps me a lot to kind of be clear where I need to go and what I need to do. You all have business cards, and you're very thoughtful putting that business card together. It describes your identity in your business. Identity is really important. If I travel a lot, and I try to be without trouble when I enter countries, and so I always think about, so what are you going to say when they ask what you do that keeps you out of trouble, that gets you through customs as quickly as possible, and of course is at the same time truthful. So I sometimes say I'm an investor. I sometimes say I'm retired. And then once I traveled to Germany, and I came through Switzerland, and there was no customs to let you through. I was driving in my car, and suddenly there was a police control. There was a customs control, a random customs control, and they stopped me. They flagged me down, and the customs officer, he said to me, "So what do you do?" And I was a little overconfident, and I said, I'm a lay preacher. I'm a lay preacher. I knew in Germany there are no lay preachers. And I knew it would test his intelligence. Suffice to say, he didn't say a word, but I saw from his face he didn't believe a word of what I said. And that response cost me at least 2 hours, and he turned everything upside down. But who you are, what is your identity? Because I think we as professionals often think at least dual identity. Right? Of course we are disciples, right? The most basic identity is I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. I should have a business card that says disciple. Valdur Koha, disciple. Okay, a lot of people don't know what to do with that, so you don't do that. But in your mind, what is your identity? How would you introduce yourself to somebody that really reflects who you are? I want to help you with that a little bit, because I did change my identity. I became a Christian in 1986, and I was a businessman at the time. I worked for Siemens. I worked for a big company, and my goal always was, my dream always was to become an entrepreneur. I always wanted to become an entrepreneur. I wanted to build my own business. I wanted to have my own business, and I dreamed for that, but I felt I didn't have the opportunity. I had, at the time, 5 kids. We were a single income. I needed to earn a living, period, a safe living, a stable living. And there was not a lot of room for experiments. But in the back of my mind, I always thought, I wanna be an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur at some point. And my identity was, if you would have asked me in the early 90s, I would have said I'm a software entrepreneur who is also very involved in his church, or something like that. I was actually not in a leadership role. I was just a regular disciple for many, many years, and I thought that was my calling and that was my identity. But the question I have for you is, what is your identity? And the identity has a lot to do with what you dream about. Amen. What do you dream about? What is your dream for your life? My dream was to be an entrepreneur. I always thought that was what I wanted. Even when I became a Christian, that was still what I wanted to become. God wants us to dream. God wants us to dream, but God wants us to dream the right dreams for our lives. That's right. Your young men will see visions. Your old men will dream dreams. Amen. God wants you and me to dream dreams about our lives. I'm 61 years old. I think I live my dream. Amen. I think I live my dream in many, many ways. It's not the American dream I'm living. Yes, I have experienced a big part of the American dream, but that's not my dream. My dream is a dream to be a kingdom entrepreneur. And I want you to wrestle with that question, in what ways your dream is to become a kingdom entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is a word that has a very narrow definition if you look it up in Webster. It's a person who starts a business and is willing to risk loss in order to make money. Wow. Well, I have a much broader definition of an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is actually a person, a man or a woman, that has a certain attitude and a certain spirit and a certain dream. Yep. An entrepreneur is a builder. He or she is a problem solver. He or she has a great passion for what he or she does. If you speak to a real entrepreneur, he doesn't talk to you about money. He talks about his fabulous product. He talks about solving a huge problem. He talks about, curing cancer. He talks about communication. He talks about his thing. He has a passion. She has a passion for what he or she does. An entrepreneur has a deep sense of quality for the work that he or she does. An entrepreneur is fulfilled, is deeply fulfilled, uses all of his gifts, his strength to do what he wants to do. An entrepreneur is a risk taker. An entrepreneur is willing to take a risk. An entrepreneur is willing to lose. An entrepreneur is a team player for the sake of what he wants to build. So what's a kingdom entrepreneur? A kingdom entrepreneur is consumed with building God's kingdom. Amen. A kingdom entrepreneur uses all his gifts to pursue his passion. A kingdom entrepreneur is completely fulfilled in what he does. And a kingdom entrepreneur is a faithful risk taker. I'll come back to that in a moment. But we have, as a fellowship right now, an incredible opportunity and an incredible challenge. After the firestorm, we have come back with a goal and with a plan to evangelize the world. Amen. At the end of the day, when you say, what is God's dream? God's dream is for this world to be evangelized. Yeah. At the end of the day, what does God care about? God cares about that all men to be saved. Amen. What is your role in world evangelism. How does world evangelism fit in your description of your identity? In which ways are you a kingdom entrepreneur involved in world missions? We, the ICOC, God needs you right now. There are 14 mission societies that are being put in place, or that have been put in place around the world, with the goal to evangelize the world. Those mission societies need professional competency experience. They need finance experts. They need organizational experts. They need experts who know how to build organizations, who oversee organizations, and who are accountable to those who give money and other resources to those organizations. The reason I'm in a full-time ministry right now has simply to do with the fact that I saw a tremendous opportunity for the things that I learned in the world to be used in the mission society, in an organizational way. I became a teacher way later. The traditional ministry roles came way later. My stepping stone was 100% through what I learned in a business world. You know, I'm working on one of the projects together with Douglas, and you know, Douglas, for those of you who are church leaders, Douglas, I think it came through very clearly. He's not the only one, but he is the visionary in Boston who helps people fulfill their own personal visions. Douglas, let you do what you want to do. Douglas will be your greatest cheerleader. He will be your greatest supporter. He will lift you up when you stumble and fall, and you do stumble and fall, at least I do. And he's the guy who says, it will all be good. And he's the guy who inspires you. He's the guy who brings fun when things are difficult. Having a friend, having a partner, having a supporter like Douglas is just incredible. You gotta allow that in your churches. But you who are an entrepreneur, I want to understand, I want you to think about, what does kingdom entrepreneur mean to you? You know, there was a man, he passed in the early 90s. His name is Tom Beam. Tom Beam was a disciple in Oklahoma. Tom Beam was an entrepreneur of all entrepreneurs. I never met Tom Beam, but I heard so many things about him. Tom Beam had a company, a seatbelt company, very successful. He basically sold seatbelts. He manufactured seatbelts in Estonia, of all places, and yes, and sold them in the U.S. To a large degree to school bus companies. That's smart, right? That's a great business model, and he was very successful. But Tom Beam did not confuse his worldly entrepreneur role with his kingdom role. It was always one and the same. He was always thinking about worldwide missions. He was always giving to worldwide missions. The only reason he actually left $11 million to the Boston church in 2004. And he gave it to the Boston church for one main reason. And that is that he thought the likelihood that there would be an impact with regard to world mission was the highest if he would give it to the Boston church. I happened to transition out of my job, which is a story for another day, around that time, and I talked to Wyndham Shaw, and we learned that this gift would come our way. Tom Beam had passed 10 years before that. His wife had passed in 2004, so the money was freed up, and $11 million came to Boston to do something with missions. And I talked to the elders, and again, the attitude of the elders at the time in Boston was incredibly open and inviting, you know. And there was the idea of, well, why don't we just divide it up, spread it throughout the kingdom, and give everybody a piece. And then the recognition was, well, we are maybe not at the place right now to really do great things with regard to world missions. And so, you know, I proposed, why don't we put an endowment together? Why don't we put a fund together that would serve projects, missions projects around the world, where people would write grant requests and would get funded if the request would meet the criteria. And the elders were very open, and we kicked off the Beam Missions Foundation. And the Beam Missions Foundation is one of the most exciting projects I'm involved in, because it's an enterprise. It's an entrepreneurial adventure. It is a kingdom adventure which there's no better one. We started off. We put the foundation in place. We started to fund projects around the world. The church that was planted in Pakistan, for example, was supported from the Beam Missions Foundation. We had projects in China and so on. And then Douglas then came on board, and of course, that was an incredible enrichment of the team, because now we had the man on the team who knows the best about world missions. And we decided, I think in 2007, 2008, to really shift the focus of the Beam Missions Foundation. We asked the question, what is most needed? What is most needed to evangelize this world? And the clear-cut answer was leadership, next generation leadership. We need missionaries. We need church leaders who will go to these places. We are a movement where money will become less and less the obstacle. We are becoming a movement where the next generation, who is going to go, become the obstacle. And so for the last 5-6 years, the Beam Missions Foundation has funded by now 8 schools around the world who train evangelists, train missionaries to plant churches around the world. There's a tremendous school in Bangalore, India. They are training between 15 and 25 young disciples trained there now for the 4th year to go into the Indian continent mission field. We have a school in Kiev in the Ukraine that is supported. We have a school in Manila. There are 8 schools around the world, and the goal really is to help the missions efforts, to have the leaders who lead those churches, to train the next generation. And I think Tom, we called it the Beam Missions Foundation because we wanted to get as close as we could to fulfill Tom's desire. But Tom was a kingdom entrepreneur. I think Tom, I'll have a cup of coffee with him in heaven, and I'll ask him and want to know what he thinks. I think he'll be excited. I think Tom would be excited to see what's going on in the Beam Missions Foundation. And Tom gave so much more than just money. He gave a lot of money, obviously. I think Tom gave his spirit, the zeal for missions, the determination, the willingness to give it all, not to his family, but to give it and to entrust it to people he never met. I never, as I said, I never met him. Tom was a kingdom entrepreneur. You may now say, well, Valdur, I'm not you, I'm not retired, I don't have a BMF to work on. I want to encourage you to think about getting ready for that moment. Well, what do you mean? I wanted to be an entrepreneur all my life. I didn't totally know how that would happen, but I knew that there are forks in life. There are moments in life where you can say, I go this way or I go that way. Where you make a decision, you go the one way or the other. You take this job or you take that job. You move into this city or you move into that city. When that moment comes, you want to be ready to take the right turn. The right turn for me was always become an entrepreneur. And what I did in my career, I just always had that in the back of my mind when there was a job opportunity, a new opening, anything where I would have an opportunity to say I do this or I do that. I always ask the question, is this going to help me to be a better entrepreneur once I am an entrepreneur or not? I got ready for it. You can do that. The moment will come where you will see an opportunity and then you want to be ready.
That's right.
There's one thing I learned late in my life. It's never too late. But when it comes to get ready to be a kingdom entrepreneur, yes, experience is important. Yes, skills are important. Yes, it's very important that you bring something to the table on a professional level that is needed. But most important is what you bring to the table as the person who you are, as your character. And I think we as professionals, we can easily fall into the trap, which I fell into for a long time, to think accomplishments, accomplishments, accomplishments. Accomplishments are not more important than who you are. Doing is not more important than being. God cares way more about who I am as a person than what I accomplish. And the question of who I am before God, who I am in my character, who I am as a person, must always trump the question, what should I accomplish? You know, my all-time favorite movie, and those of you who have heard me speak probably say, here it comes again. I'll give it a little different twist because I learned something. But my all-time favorite movie is Chariots of Fire. I assume you all know it. It's this incredible runners movie. I was a runner myself, that's one reason I enjoy it. But Eric Liddell was this British runner. He was a Christian. He was a world-class runner. This is a true story. The movie is about the Olympics in 1924 in Paris. Of course, he was on the British team and he was supposed to run the 100-meter dash. That was his discipline. That's what he was supposed to be really good at. And the heats were on Sunday morning. And for his Christian convictions, he said, I can't compete on Sunday. It's the Lord's Day. I cannot do it. I'm not going to compete. We don't have the conviction that we shouldn't compete on Sunday. But do we have the conviction to forgo success in the world in order to please God? It's a wonderful story, and he didn't run. A lot of people got upset with him, of course, and then they offered him to run the 400 meters, which was not his distance, not his prime distance. And it's just a wonderful scene in the movie as he wins that gold medal. And it's a true story. He ran world record and over 400 meters, and he was the hero of all heroes, especially in Great Britain. But there's a sideline to the story in the movie, which is actually the main line of his life. The sideline is that his sister says to him, Eric, stop running. You're supposed to be a missionary. Your purpose in life is to serve God in the mission field. And then Eric said, yeah, I know. God made me for a purpose. But God also made me fast. And when I run, I feel God's pleasure on me. And then the movie ends with one line. It's the trailer ends and it says, Eric Liddell died in China as a missionary. There's a new book that came out a little earlier this year. Randy McKean actually pointed me to it. It's called For the Glory. And it actually describes Eric Liddell's, it's a biography of Eric Liddell. The part about his running is the smallest part in the book, which is the movie. The longest part in the book is his time in China as a missionary. And what you can see, you got to read that book. All right, I tell you. The way he served as a missionary was unbelievable. Unbelievable. The person he was the Japanese invaded China at the time. It was incredibly dangerous. It was horrible. It was unbelievably the conditions in which he lived. He ended up in the equivalent of a prison camp under horrendous circumstances. He got married. He had 3 children. His wife was sent back to Canada because it was too dangerous to be in China. She was pregnant with their 3rd daughter. He never saw his 3rd daughter in his whole life. He never met his family again. He died in China in a prison camp. And the story of Eric Liddell as a missionary is actually way more inspiring and true and God-pleasing than his running. Yep. See, Eric Liddell was not confused about his purpose in life. He was not confused about his gift set. He was not confused that he could also serve God by doing what he was good at. But at the end of the day, he was a kingdom entrepreneur. He always thought kingdom first. He always thought, how do I please God? And how can I glorify God? Amen. And to God be the glory.